We're going to get
Okay, you can start now.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to day 3 of our Faculty of Sciences virtual orientation. This morning, you are going to be doing Introduction to PBL, as well as a systematic approach to PBL with PBL video demonstration and PBL questions and answer session. This session is being facilitated by Dr. Sahu. Dr. Pradeep Kumar Sahu is a lecturer in curriculum development in the Center for Medical Sciences Education at the Faculty of Medical Sciences, UWI. He has done his PhD in education and specialized in curriculum development. More than 10 years of experience in curriculum designing, mapping, and evaluation. He has expertise in teacher education and contributed in faculty development for the last 7 years. Some of his current professional activities include conducting workshops on PBL mapping, PBS curriculum monitoring, PBL groups, and preparing educational program documents in the Caribbean Accreditation Authority for Education in Medicine. He has published 18 research articles and 2 books on education, medical education, and mental health. Good morning, Dr. Sahu, and welcome to orientation. I hand over to you.
Thank you, Rihanna. Good morning, students. Welcome to Faculty of Medical Science. So before I talk about PBL, let me ask you one question. Can you tell me what PBL stands for? You can chat, I can see your chat. So can you tell me what PBL stands for? Have you heard about PBL? So anyhow, if it is new for you, then also it's good. So PBL stands for problem-based learning. Okay, I had another question. If you could try that learning, a problem-based learning class is a place where students sit, meet, and eat. Listen, remain silent, and go. Receive, interact, create knowledge, and reflect. Make fun and run. Can you tell me what is the right option? Okay, let me tell you. It is new for you. So PBL means it is a class, it is a place where students interact, create knowledge, and reflect. So, you know, PBL is one of the most integral part of our teaching and learning in Faculty of Medical Science. So, before you enter into the PBL class, you must have the knowledge of PBL so that you can participate actively, contribute in the classroom. So in today's presentation, I'm going to tell you what exactly PBL is, what are the features or characteristics of PBL, and because this year especially, we are going to attend online PBL, we have to know what is the difference between online PBL and face-to-face PBL. And most important thing is steps of PBL. You have to know the steps of PBL before you enter into the class. Then who are the leader, scribe, and group members, what will be their role, we have to understand. And also at the same time, advantages and limitations of PBL. And at the end part of my presentation, I'll be giving a PBL video demonstration so that you can understand PBL practically. So let's start. What exactly PBL is? See the definition given by the pioneer of PBL, H.S. Barrows. PBL is a learning method based on the principle of using problems as a starting point for the acquisition and integration of new knowledge. So while I'll be presenting, you will be able to understand that in PBL, problems as a starting point, and at the end, you are going to solve the problem. So at the bottom of my slide, you can see definition of PBL will not be changed for online PBL. It means when you are going into online PBL, the definition will be the same, the steps will be the same. Only thing you are going to do in online is the mode of learning is online. Otherwise, the steps, everything will be the same. I have made this definition. Once you understand this definition, you'll be able to understand the meaning of PBL properly. Problem-based learning is a learner-centered and self-directed learning approach where a small group of students participate actively in the learning process, applying knowledge and skills to resolve an ill-structured problem, engaging critical and collaborative learning behavior. So I have highlighted the important features of PBL from this definition. You can see problem-based learning, it is a learning-centered approach. What you have studied in your previous institution, the teaching learning process was mainly based on teacher-centered. Now, PBL is learner-centered, self-directed, small group, and you are going to participate actively. An ill-structured problem, critical thinking, and collaborative learning like teamwork. So these are the features. I'm going to discuss one by one so that you can easily understand. So these are the key features of online PBL. So as I told, this time we are going to learn online PBL. So in online PBL, there are only two characteristics additional. The first two others are the same. The first one in online PBL mode is online mode of learning. So in PBL, online PBL, definitely you are going to learn online learning and self-discipline, small group of learning, self-directed learning. Problem is the starting point, ill-structured problem. I'm going to explain one by one. Critical thinking, collaborative learning, constructive learning, and long-term learning. Okay, online mode. We don't have any choice, but we should consider this as an opportunity. Sitting at your home, you are going to learn the PBL, online PBL. So definitely you should have the devices to get connected with us to learn this online PBL mode of learning. So another characteristics of online PBL is self-discipline. This, I think, is one of the most important characteristics. Why? If you will not make self-discipline, then the PBL process will be distracted. Suppose when discussion is going on, you'll go to the kitchen and cook and your mic is unmute. So everybody will be distracted, get disturbed. So you have to learn discipline. The teachers, tutors, or do not tell you that, okay, mute your mic. Okay, you don't go there, you don't talk. You have to learn self-discipline. So self-discipline is very much important in online PBL. Another important feature is small group. The good thing about PBL is the group is very small. So what you can participate, you can speak. Now suppose in large group class, even if you want to speak, even if you want to ask questions, the two-way interaction is not possible. But in small group, you have to speak, you have to contribute, you have to think critically, and you'll get a lot of advantage. So this is small group, maybe group number, maybe 10 or 13, like that. So as I told you, self-directed learning. Self-directed learning means what you have learned in your previous institution, your teacher taught you, and whatever knowledge he gave or she gave, you learn. But here you have to learn by yourself. You have to go to the library, but library also practically not possible. You have to search different informations to get the solution. So self-directed learning. Here in PBL, problem is the starting point. you are a critical thinker. You are going to solve the problem. So to solve the problem, there should have a problem. So here in PBL process, the PBL will start with the problem. And how problem look like? It look like this. So a problem will be given to you, and you will read this problem, and there is a process. I'm going to tell you what are the process. So you are going to learn the process, and step by step you try to find out the solution of the problem. So that's why I call problem is the starting point of PBL. Next is ill structured problem. What is the difference between well structured problem and ill structured problem? Well structure means there is a problem, but you can easily identify the solution. If I will tell you that, okay, suppose you are feeling hungry, what you are going to do? This is very like well structured. You know, if you are hungry, you are going to eat food. So you don't need to think anything. But if the problem is critical, if problem is little complex, you have to think. Suppose I am going to ask you one question. That if COVID is going to spread in your community, how you are going to deal with the situation? This problem is complex, ill-structured. So you have to think critically to find out an acceptable solution. So in PBL process also, you will be given an ill-structured problem. Critical thinking. Just think about your previous institution where, excuse me, where you did not get opportunity to think critically. Teaching was only teacher-centered. Teacher gave you the knowledge and you learn knowledge. Okay? That was not critical thinking. So in this, could you please mute your mic? Ida Yaram? Yeah, thank you. So in critical thinking, you will read the problem, you will find out what could be the solution, how it happened, how to get rid of this problem. You will discuss with friends, with your peer groups. You have to think in different perspective. And finally, you will try to get the solution. So you are going to get the opportunity to think critically in this PBL process. Collaborative learning. This is one of the best steps the best characteristics I would say, because PBL is about teamwork. When you are solving the problem, you are in a team. With your peer group, you are going to discuss the problem. You are going to discuss the solution, or you are going to research together. So it is a teamwork. You alone can't solve the problem. So the best thing about the PBL is it is a teamwork, collaborative learning. Constructive learning. Again, I will tell you what is the difference between what you have learned and what you are going to learn. What you have learned is knowledge. It means when your teacher taught you, you received knowledge, but you did not create knowledge. Now in PBL process, this is higher level of learning. You have come to higher education. So not only you have little knowledge of some concept, having the little knowledge of concept, you will discuss the problem with your group, and finally at the end you are going to construct a new knowledge. So that's why it is called constructive learning approach. Lifelong learning. So why PBL is called lifelong learning? If someone is teaching you, like I'm giving you lecture, you are listening, you can't recall this for a long time. But when you are involved in the teaching learning process, when you are speaking in the teaching learning process, you are finding out the solution, then that will help you to understand for a long time. So that's why it is called as a lifelong learning process. So these are the characteristics. Now we will try to find out what are the difference between online PBL and face-to-face PBL? Like, because this is online and you are in large group, I can't ask you any question. But when in face-to-face, it's easy for me to ask some question, and I would find out the difference between online PBL and face-to-face PBL from you. But now I have to speak. So what is the difference? The online PBL, it is very simple. That's online mode. You have to depend on your devices to get connected. Whereas in face-to-face PBL, all students, a group of students will sit together face-to-face. Another difference is digital literacy. Without the having of knowledge of technology, you can't get connected online. So you must have the knowledge of technology, how to operate computer, how to operate my e-learning, Blackboard collaborate, everything, how to raise hand, how to mute, unmute, everything. Whereas in face-to-face PBL, digital literacy is not required. But like last year also, our students were using, some of our students were using laptop in the PBL class, but it was not mandatory, it's up to them. But in online PBL, you have to learn how to deal with the technology. Then place of learning, another difference is, now in online PBL, you don't need to sit together in a class. You are learning from your home. Whereas in face-to-face PBL, small group of students were sitting in one class. The discipline, as I told you, self-discipline is very much important. If a tutor or other students will tell you again and again, that will distract the teaching learning process. So you have to understand self-discipline to make the PBL more effective. Whereas in face-to-face PBL, discipline was based on external and self. It means when in the class you were whispering or speaking in a small group or distracting, tutor or leader were telling you, yes, please keep quiet. But here it will distract the teaching learning process in online PBL. So motivation, again, self-motivation. Now I'm speaking something. I can't see you whether you are watching me, listening to me carefully, or you are in your kitchen. So you have to understand that PBL is very much important. It is an integral part of teaching learning process. Without having knowledge of PBL, you can't participate actively in your teaching learning process. So you have to get self-motivation. Yes, this is important, and I have to learn. I should not distract myself. Whereas in face-to-face PBL, your tutor were motivating you, your group were motivating you. So, and self-motivation. Okay, attendance. Again, in online PBL, although you will get connected, tutor can't see you whether you are actually connected to PBL or not. So it is really little bit difficult. You may log in and go to the kitchen, stretch your hand, and you can sleep for some time. So who will see you? So in online PBL, real attendance, evaluating the real attendance is little difficult. Whereas in face-to-face, because you are in the same class, everybody can see you properly. So it's very easy to make attendance, measure the attendance of the participants. Communication. Online PBL, verbal communication means you have to speak. Otherwise, nobody can understand you. But in face-to-face PBL, your communication can be verbal and non-verbal. You can nod your head, you can raise your hand, or anything, like you can show your face, tutor can understand, but not in online PBL. You have to speak. Okay, what are the objectives of PBL? Basically, in medical education, medical and health professional education, you have to be competent in 3 areas. One is knowledge, then skills and attitude. Just remember, in your previous schooling, what you did, you understood, you had knowledge of different concepts, but only having knowledge is not sufficient. You have some skills now, and you have the value, you have the attitude to understand certain things. So what are the objectives? You have to learn knowledge, means theoretical, and conceptual, means whatever you are going to study or learn in PBL, like some concept, anatomy, physiology, pathology, whatever, you are going to understand that concept. Other than the concept, the skills, as I told you, critical thinking, you have never utilized these skills, but now you are going to learn critical thinking skills in PBL. You are going to think in different perspective, how to address this problem. So critical thinking, research skill. You may be doing the research skills for the first time, means you will do research to get the solution of the problem. Then communication skills. As I told you, if you will not speak, you cannot contribute. And you have to speak and speak to make yourself confident, to contribute yourself to or participate actively in this PBL process. Then also I told self-directed learning skills, lifelong learning skills. So these are the skills. Other than this also, there are so many skills you are going to learn. There are hidden skills. So you are going to learn a lot of things from your PBL process. Then attitude, value of teamwork. You are going to do so many things. You are going to get the solution of the problem through collaborative learning, interpersonal skills. If someone is speaking, your peer, one of the students is speaking, you have to listen carefully. You have to respect his views. So these are the objectives of PBL, also online PBL. Now let's see the PBL settings in FMS. Till last academic session, the PBL setting was like this, means our students were sitting in a class in a face-to-face mode, in a semicircle. You can see there are 4 categories of people. One, tutor, who is experienced, expert in PBL, and maybe have little or more knowledge on the subject. Second category is leader. Leader, I have written leader should be from a student group. And third category is scribe, also a student. And rest of the members are also students who are the group members in the PBL process. This was the setting, PBL setting in our Faculty of Medical Science, but this time it is not possible. So how the PBL setting will be? This will be the setting. So you all will be sitting at your home. Now you can see where is the tutor, where is the leader, and where is the scribe, and where are you? So you all can learn from your home. And this is the best thing about technology. Okay, now I gave little knowledge about PBL, problem-based learning. Even if having this knowledge, you can't enter into the class. The most important aspect is PBL steps. Before you enter into the class, you have to understand these PBL steps, which are the standard steps of our Faculty of Medical Science. We have taken these based on the Maastricht 7-jump method. So I'm going to tell you again and again, you have to understand these 7 steps. Step number 1, identification and clarification of unfamiliar words and phrases. Remember it carefully. identification and clarification of unfamiliar words and phrases. Please note down this one. So this can be called as, in short, you can call it unfamiliar words and phrases. Second step is problem analysis and identification of the main issues. In short, you can call it as issues or main issues. I'm going to discuss each point properly. So before discussing, you must understand there are 7 steps. You have to remember these steps. Step number 3 is hypothesis formulation. You can call it as hypothesis. Step number 4, identification of student-generated learning objectives or simply objectives. Number 5, self-directed learning. Number 6, problem resolution and knowledge consolidation. Number 7, application of new knowledge to problem. I hope you understand, you remember these steps. There are 7 steps. So first 4 steps. Step 1, unfamiliar words and phrases, issues, hypothesis, and objectives. These 4 steps are known as brainstorming session. Remember it carefully, brainstorming session. First 4 step. And number 5 step is called in-between session. It is self-directed study. And step number 6 and 7 is called as discussion session. So you have 2 sessions basically. First session is called brainstorming session, where you are going to cover 4 steps. And last 2 steps known as discussion session. So in between brainstorming and discussion session, there will be 1 week gap, which is known as self-directed study. When I will discuss it elaborately, you will be able to understand. So what I told, brainstorming session 1 to 4, then discussion session 6 to 7. So how the PBL process will go? Suppose there are 4 problems. In 4 problems, in the day 1, only you are going to attend the brainstorming session. Case 1 or problem 1. Case 1 or problem 1. First week, only you are going to cover 4 steps. I have already told you that is called brainstorming session. In the following week, next week, what we are going to do? Suppose Monday, your PBL is on Monday. First Monday, brainstorming session. The following Monday, you have to finish your discussion. In between, there will be 1 week gap. So Monday to Monday, 1 week gap. What you are going to do in the gap? Self-directed learning means you have to do research to find out the solution. And when you come to the PBL class next week on Monday or Tuesday, whatever day, so you are going to discuss steps 6 and 7. Then steps 6, 7 finished, then start new problem, problem 2. And again, next week, finish the discussion step, then start new problem. And at the end of the week, now you have only discussion of problem 4. In this way, the PBL will go on. So let us learn stepwise. As I told you, there are 7 steps. Out of the 7 steps, step 1 is identification and clarification of unfamiliar words and phrases, what you can call as unfamiliar words and phrases. So what we are going to do, as I told, one problem will be given to you. So one of the students will read the problem, and rest of the students, they will see what are the unfamiliar words. Suppose I am here speaking to you, a non-medical professional. I have highlighted 3 of the unfamiliar words. You can read this problem Also, you can also find out the unfamiliar words or phrases. If you have any difficult or unfamiliar words, immediately you tell to the group that, okay, toxifera. Sometimes you can't pronounce, like strychnos. I can't pronounce properly. So the tutor will help you to pronounce the unfamiliar words, difficult word properly. So as I told, one student will read the problem. The group members will state the unfamiliar words and phrases. Tutor will help in correcting the mispronunciation. Unfamiliar words are clarified using reliable sources. This is important. Before this, what I was telling that, okay, to define this unfamiliar word, students will bring a medical dictionary and define the unfamiliar term. But now, because online mode, I can tell you, you can use some online sources to define the unfamiliar word. Tutor will not define, tutor will not tell the meaning of extract or toxifera or muscle contraction. You have to define by yourself. So from the online sources, only thing tutor can help you that whatever sources you have taken, that is the authentic source or not. Tutor can tell you. So tutor will help you that which is the authentic source. And scribe. In my presentation, I'm going to tell you what is scribe. Scribe will record in Google Docs. You must be acquainted with Google Doc. You have to do some practice how to use Google Doc. So scribe, whatever the unfamiliar word, scribe will write that, and also scribe will define as discussed in the group. Scribe has to write the difficult word with its meaning. The first step is very easy, so simple. What I told, so only read the problem and find out unfamiliar words and define the word from the online sources. It should be authentic, and the scribe has to write the difficult word and its meaning. This is very simple. Now coming to second step. Now you understand the whole problem. What is the problem about? Then again, you have to read. One student will read the problem line by line. Okay, there are some tribes in the Amazon who dip their arrows in an extract from the plant, Strychnos toxifera, in order to immobilize animals when hunting. So now reading one line, you have to find out the issues. What are the problem here? So you have to think in different perspective. I'm telling you, before coming to PBL, you have to attend a large group class where you have little knowledge about this concept. So you will know little about this PBL problem. Now you are discussing why this problem happened. What is the problem here? And you will discuss. This is called brainstorming. That's why it's called brainstorming. You have to think critically and in different perspective. Not only you, all the peer group, you have to contribute. So what are the things you have to do? If important issues are identified and recorded online. All students, remember, all of you have to participate in identifying what are the problems. Reading the line, reading in between the line, you have to find out what are the problems. What are the problems and why do you think so? When you are writing the issues, remember, it should be in question form, not in statement form. So these steps, step 3 is hypothesis formulation. So in hypothesis formulation, now you know the problem. So you know these are the problem. You have suppose 6 problems, 7 problems. You have identified the problem. Now you have to find out the solution, which is called hypothesis formulation. Whatever problems you have, now you have to find out the probable possible explanation. What could be the possible explanation? So address each issue and propose possible explanations or tentative solution. So one issue can have more than one hypothesis. For example, you have an issue, COVID-19. How to get your one issue is how to address this COVID-19 situation. Issue is one, but what could be the hypothesis? Hypothesis can be more than one. Like we have to wash our hand, we have to use mask, we have to maintain physical or social distancing. You see, there are so many hypotheses, but issue is one. So similarly, more than one issues can have one hypothesis. Sometimes one issue, you have to find out only one hypothesis. While you are discussing the issues and hypotheses, you will be able to understand. Also, I am going to show you a practical video how issues and hypotheses are formulated. So I told you one issue must have one hypothesis or more than one hypothesis. Similarly, more than one issues can have also one hypothesis. You don't need to worry. So again, hypothesis to be written by the scribe on Google Doc so that each student can see the hypothesis properly. So for each issue, possible explanation in different ways. Now, as I told you, you have some previous knowledge, you have learned little anatomy, physiology, everything. So you have to think it critically and try to find out the probable or possible explanation from different perspectives. Now, step 4, identification of student-generated learning objectives. Now, you have understand the problem by defining the difficult words, and you have framed the issues, and you have the possible explanation. Now, what you want to do, you want to get the objectives. Objectives, you can see the bottom of my slide. Like an objective will be in statement from, like explain the anatomy of. What are the objectives? Like, as I told you, that how to address COVID-19. You found so many issues, or one issue. You found so many hypotheses, or one hypothesis. Now you have to find out what objectives I should learn so that I can address COVID-19. So the objective is you have to learn the pathology, you have to learn the vaccination, you have to learn so many objectives. So similarly, once you find out the issues and hypotheses, now you have to frame the objectives, and based on the objectives, you can try to find out the solution, which is not probable solution, which is the exact solution. So when you are framing the objectives, make sure that it is you all students are agreed upon that, and tutor ensures learning objectives are focused, achievable, comprehensive, and appropriate. So a good thing about the PBL is there will be a tutor in your group who will guide you when you feel necessary. If you are going out of the track, if you are doing anything wrong, tutor will prompt you or guide you. Tutor may need to prompt to ensure that major objectives are identified. In each problem, some of the objectives are fixed, like there are 6 objectives, 7 objectives. Tutor knows that. So if in case you are missing any of the objectives, tutor will guide you, prompt you. He will not directly tell you this is the objective. He will ask you some question, critical thinking question, or prompt you so that you can define or frame the objectives. So now I finished 4 steps, step 1 to step 4, which is known as brainstorming session. Now your brainstorming session is over. Then self-directed study. You can't go to the library. So now online learning. So this self-directed study is also called as research phase of PBL, research phase of problem-based learning. one thing you have to remember from the day one, each member has to learn all the objectives. This one is very much important. Why? Suppose in future you are going to be as a healthcare worker. Suppose you are a doctor and one patient is coming to you. She is telling or he is telling some problem. Do you want to say that, yes, I know only objective one, so anatomy, I know anatomy part only. I don't know the physiology part. I have to call my friend, he will come and will discuss and solve your problem. You can't tell like that. So you have to understand the whole problem. So in the PBL process, suppose there are 6 objectives, you have to understand, you have to learn all the objectives. This is one benefit, that you will be able to understand the whole objectives. Another thing is, now we have online PBL system. In online PBL mode, suppose one student is asked to present objective number 1. You have already learned and you are explaining to your peer group, and suddenly the internet, you had internet connectivity issue, you are disconnected. What will happen? If any other student does not know objective 1 properly, what will happen? The PBL process, the purpose will be defeated. So that's why you all have to understand all research, all the objectives, learn all the objectives, so that tutor can ask you to present one objective. If you are not able to present, he can ask you to any other students, so that he can easily present the research objectives. Another advantage of learning all the objectives is you can ask so many questions to your peer group. Asking questions is also one of the most important criteria of PBL process. So you should ask questions to build your confidence, to develop the confidence of your friend, and to make the PBL process more effective. So that's why, remember this point very carefully. When you do research, you learn all the objectives properly, so that you have the holistic knowledge of the problem. Then utilize authentic online resources. I'm telling you again and again. Now Google is our teacher, so you know everything is available on Google, but you can't take wrong thing from the Google. So make sure that whatever you are taking from online, it should be authentic. If you have any difficulty to understand which one is authentic, take guidance from your tutor. I told you, in your group, there will be one tutor to guide when you feel necessary. And whenever, this is also from the day one, you have to remember, whenever you are doing a research, whenever you are getting any information from any of the sources, definitely write the references, so that the tutor or any of the student will ask you, where did you get this? Then you can show the reference. Then whatever doing your research you are doing, okay, you are now getting information how to wash a hand, or how to maintain clean health, or whatever data you are collecting. Understand that before you sharing the information, you must understand that this is important. Then you can share to your scribe or to the group. Okay, step 6 is problem resolution and knowledge consolidation. So now brainstorming session is over. You went to the online resources, whatever objectives you had, now you got the solution. Now you understand the problem, and you are coming to the PBL class next week. So you are going to present. So you are going to present now. So whatever objectives, suppose the tutor told you Okay, present objective number 1. So this is your skill. You have to show your skill now. You have to prepare a nice PowerPoint presentation and present yourself. Make sure that you are not reading the text. These are the steps I'm telling you. Share the research information. Scribe, share, excuse me. I have a phone. Okay. I'm in the class. Okay. Okay. I'm in the class. Okay. Okay. Sorry. So share the research information to the scribe. What is the advantage of sharing the information to the scribe? Last year, one of the course we did online. So we saw some problem. One of the major problem is time management. What happened? Each student presented the information, research information. So they were sharing the screen. Then this will take time. So better what you should do, whatever PPT you have prepared, pass on to the scribe so that only scribe will share the screen. And you don't need to hustle for sharing the screen or anything. So please share the research information to the scribe so that she or he will be ready to present, share the screen. Then short presentations should be encouraged. This is very much important. Don't use long video like 10 minutes video. You will be given only 5 minutes. In the 5 minutes, if you present for 5 minutes or go beyond that and only show video, that will be less interesting. So even if you need to present something video clippings, just 1 minute or 2 minutes, and definitely use PPTs and good pictures. Now you can't show model, so good pictures, images you can show and make the presentation very much effective, so that other students will appreciate you and you will get some confidence and you will build your communication skills. And also I'm telling you, don't read any information from the textbook. Suppose one paragraph or 5 minutes you are presenting or 3 minutes you are presenting. Suppose whole time you see a book and read like this. Nobody will listen to you and your presentation will be very less effective. And also I told whatever information you have taken, it should be authentic, and you encourage other students to ask questions after your presentation. So any student can ask for clarification and if they require. And most important thing is time management. If tutor is saying, if the group is saying you have to present for 5 minutes, don't go beyond. Some students I have seen, they present for 20 minutes, 30 minutes. That is very boring. Other students may not like that. Whatever information you have, try to finish it within 5 minutes. So this is step 6. Now step 7. So just think about step 1. When you were at step 1, you did not have any knowledge about PBL. You did not have the knowledge about the problem. You defined the problem, understood the problem, then found the issues, hypotheses, objectives. Then you went online, find out the solution of the objectives, research properly. Now you learn everything and came to the PBL class for discussion, and you presented whatever you want to present, and other peer groups also presented, so you know everything. What you have to do? Again, you have to read the problem line by line, and you have to explain very briefly what you learned from this problem. Step 1, you did not have knowledge. Step 7, now you have the knowledge. So reading in between the line, you add whatever you have learned. While reading in between the line, you realize that you missed one line, one issue. You can frame the issue again, and in next session, you can find out the solution of that issue. So this is all about the steps from step 1 to step 7. Now tell me, I think you have already remembered the steps. The advantage of this talk is I cannot ask you questions. So I can tell you what are the steps. Insert, step number 1, unfamiliar words and phrases. Step number 2, issues. Step number 3, hypothesis and objectives. This step 1 to step 4 is known as brainstorming session. And step 5, self-directed session, means you are going to research from the online sources. Then step 6, problem resolution, and step 7, application of new knowledge. I hope you understood the 7 steps. Without having knowledge of these 7 steps, you should not go to the PBL class. Okay, let's try. Little practical that we are going to the class. So what are the things we required while going to the class? The first thing is internet connectivity. Make sure that you have the devices, laptop or whatever necessary to get connected. You must have those devices, and you have internet connectivity. Remember, if you have poor internet connectivity or you have problem, then you cannot attend the PBL class or any online teaching class. So this is the first thing you need. Second, log on to My e-learning well before time. You must have the My e-learning account. Have you gone, I can't ask even, have you gone to the My e-learning account? If you go to the My e-learning account, I'll tell you now a little bit. So you'll find BBC, Blackboard Collaborate. You have to practice before you attend the class. You have to practice what is BBC. Then ask students for action. So what is important here, that you see all students in the university, thousands of students will use the online BBC mode. So initially, what university is planning that all students should get connected properly. So in that case, tutor may ask you, okay, you mute your video. You can stay in the audio mode. But while in the first week, you are giving your introduction in the class, you can show your video so that you can see each other. Who are in your group? You know who is the tutor. Tutor should know who are the students. So initially, you should keep your video mode on, and if internet is going slow, tutor may ask you that transfer it to audio mode. So, well, in the first week, definitely introduction will be the most important thing to understand each other. Then in your group, you are going to make some ground rule, and tutor also help you, like what time you log in, what are the steps you are going to cover, anything, any ground rule. So then in the first week or every problem, you have to select one leader and one scribe. What in my presentation, I will tell what is leader, who are going to be leader and scribe. So My e-learning, if you have account, you might have seen this one. You have student portal. I'm telling a little bit. I know you know about this My e-learning, but still I'm telling a little bit. So you try. If you have not gone to this My e-learning portal, try to open this. Any students who has done the registration process must have the access to this My e-learning. So go to the My e-learning. If you enter, then you see your courses. When you click, suppose year 1, MDSC 1001. If you click to MDSC 1001, you will be able to see timetable. You will be able to see so many information given by your course convener. So this is My learning. Just practice. Go into this and you will see everything. And this is BBC. So in My e-learning only, you'll find that, okay, your class will be done in BBC, then you'll find a BBC link. So when you click BBC, you'll find this one. BBC looks like this. So you make a little practice about BBC. This is Blackboard Collaborate. In the whole session, this BBC or Blackboard Collaborate is going to be most important part of your teaching learning process. So you have to learn how to mute, and if you see the cursor, I don't know whether you can see or not. This is mute or unmute your audio, video. This is raise your hand. See the bottom part at the center. Then if you go to the right, there are so many options, chart, then participant, then you moderator. If you are a scribe, moderator will allow you, or the tutor will allow you to share the screen. So just practice this BBC. This is very easy like Zoom. So in the whole session, you are going to use this BBC every day to learn. And in PBL also, this will be your important softwares. So you have to learn everything through BBC only. So now understanding the role of leader, members, and scribe. In PBL, I told you 4 category of people like leader, member, scribe, and another important aspect is like 4 pillar. Important pillar is tutor. So one, because students will be the leader and scribe, you have to understand the role. So first, let's see what is the role of the leader. Every time, whether you are leader, a scribe, or group member, internet connectivity is the must. You have to, leader's responsibility will be more as compared to other group members. So you have to log in timely and also get acquainted with Blackboard Collaborate. And leader, self-discipline is important. You have to learn self-discipline, and at the same time, although I told that discipline should be self-discipline for other students, in case any students unmute the audio or video or anything, any kind of distraction you realize you should interfere, you can ask the students to mute the mic or anything. So this is your responsibility to move the PBL class smoothly. So who will introduce the problem? You have to introduce, and you may read the problem. As I told, problem has to be read, so you have to read the problem, or if you want, you can ask any of the students to read the problem loudly or properly. Then, as I told you, PBL means active participation. Sometimes students don't participate, sometimes remain silent. You have to remember the name of all the students, and you have to call, okay, Jonathan, what do you think about this? Jonathan or Phillips, do you have any unfamiliar words? You have to interfere, you have to speak, and you have to make sure that in every PBL class, like suppose 10 students or 13 students or 12 students, 2-3 students speak continuously and rest of the students remain silent. Don't do like that. Don't allow 2 students to dominate the class. Encourage equal participation. If you saw that Smith has spoken a lot, that you can ask Smith, okay, allow other students also to speak. So make sure that all the students are participating in the PBL process. And remember, all the students, one day you have to be a leader, because leader will be not be fixed for all the problem. Every time, for every problem, leader will be changed. So remember, one day you are going to be a leader, so you must have to understand the role of the leader. Then if one student you realize speaking out of the track, you have to tell, okay, Emmanuel, you are speaking wrong, you are going out of the track, okay, come back. Then whatever, suppose issues, 5 students for one issue, they have five kind of hypotheses, similar kind of hypotheses. You can summarize. Okay, can you make like this? So you have to summarize the discussion, summarize the issues, summarize the hypothesis every time. And the most important thing is time management. If as a leader, if you will not see the timing, then it will go beyond 3 hours. Your PBL class is 3 hours. So if you will not interfere, it may go beyond 3 hours. Last year experience, last session, few of the PBL classes went beyond 3 hours. Because suppose one student is given 5-minute presentation. If he or she is speaking for 10 minutes and you will do nothing, then what will happen? And suppose while discussing the issues, one line discussing the issues for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, then the process will go along. As a leader, you have to interfere and you have to manage the time. If there are 5 different perspectives, you have to summarize that and make them agreement, find agreement in conflicting points. 6, help from tutor if needed. If in any place you have any doubt, you are not able to do anything, take the help from the tutor. Okay, leader's job done. Now scribe. In online PBL class, I think scribe is going to play the most important role, because while I was presenting, I told scribe will record, scribe will write, scribe will share. So let's see what scribe will do. The first thing is you must have the device and connectivity, internet connectivity, timely login. Use Google Doc. I would suggest you to use Google Doc. However, if there are any alternative, you can use, but most of the tutors prefer to use Google Doc. I think you know what is Google Doc. If you don't know, before going to the class, you must practice. For Google Doc, you must have a Google or Gmail account. Then this is the process. You have to open the Google Doc, start a new document, share the document to the group. The speciality, the good thing about the Google Doc, that at one time, at the same time, all the students can edit, write on the same document. So you have seen this account like Google, you have used in your lifetime so many times. So on the right hand side, you can see there are 9 dots. If you click this 9 dot, then again on the right hand side, you can find this Google Doc. This icon, I have highlighted Google Doc. If you click, you'll find this Google Doc page, blank sheet. If you click this blank sheet, you will get this page. Now you can type anything, whatever you want to type. So scribe, remember, I would suggest you to use Google Doc, practice how, and again remember, all the students will be a scribe for some days, any of the problems. So all the students have to practice how to use Google Doc. You have to share the Google Doc to your group so that any of the students can type here, edit here whenever they feel required. Okay, so as I told, scribe role is very much important, because you have to, from the beginning, you have to record everything. Step 1, if you remember, unfamiliar terms, you have to write in this Google Doc. Then define that term, and you have to launch to share the screen. Then write down the main issues, hypotheses, learning objectives. Okay, one important thing is, while writing the issues, hypotheses, and objectives, other students should not write anything, because it will distract the scribe. Only the scribe should write the main issues, hypotheses, and learning objectives. And seeking clarification when necessary. Whenever you have any doubt, you ask for clarification. And take part in discussion. Okay, scribe job is not confining in writing or in sharing the screen. You have to participate equally while framing the issues, while framing the hypothesis or framing the objectives. You have to contribute. You have to also think critically, because only writing will not be sufficient. Okay, how this is just a sample, like how you are going to write. Suppose this is a Google Doc page. It looks like this. Unfamiliar terms at the top, you have to write the unfamiliar terms, then define issues 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How many you have to write the issues, then hypothesis, then objectives. You can write like this, or if you like want another sample, you can use like this also. Make column. Many of the students do like this because they want to see the issues and hypothesis together, so that they can link the issues or hypothesis with the issues. So it is up to you. You are going to use this or you are going to use this sample. It's up to you. Okay, now you understood the role of leader and scribe. Now group member. Out of 12 or 13 students, one student will be the leader and one student will be the scribe. What will be the role of the group members? As a group member, if you want to make the PBL process more effective, you have also certain role. Definitely, first thing this time is internet connectivity. If you don't have the connectivity, then gone. You can't take part in this PBL process. Then also I show you my e-learning, BBC, Blackboard Collaborate. You just practice before, so that while in the class you will, don't disturb in the class. Just how to mute, unmute, how to raise hand, how to chat. There is whiteboard also. Anything you want to practice, you can make practice. Or there is online video also, how to use Blackboard Collaborate. Just see, watch it. So log on to my e-learning well before time, edit Google Docs when necessary. As I told, during brainstorming session, don't disturb to the scribe by editing. It is scribe's job to write main issues, hypothesis, and objectives. So other time, if you feel it is required, it is necessary, you can edit. Offline, even out of the class, PBL class, when you get 1 week time, that time you may need to share your documents. So you can use Google Doc. Another important thing, never forget, in your like when I'm speaking, I can see there are some participants like CMSC. Suppose you don't know who is CMSC. How can you speak? So when you are using your devices, make sure that you write your name so that the tutor can talk to you, ask you, yes, Jonathan, yes, Naveen, yes, Ramsaru. So you have to write your name. Otherwise, tutor will say, yes, Samsung, yes, iPhone, how it look, how it sound. So please write your name on your device when you are logging into BBC. Then another important thing is self-discipline. Never forget to maintain self-discipline. Participate in brainstorming and discussion. As I told you, there are few students, 2-3 students definitely you'll find in a group. They know everything, but they are very shy. They don't want to speak. If you will not speak, you can't contribute. If you can't contribute, you can't learn. So learn to ask questions in the class, learn to participate, think critically, and definitely contribute in the brainstorming as well as in the discussion session. Suppose you are 10 students and in discussion session, only there are 5 objectives, 5 presenters, and you are not presenting this week. What you are going to do? because you have done that, you have already researched all the objectives, you know everything. And if you think that one of the presenter, while presenting, you have some doubt, you can ask question. Or if you want to add anything in objective number 1 while presenting, you can say, okay, I have something to add. Can I speak, leader? With the permission of leader, whether you are a presenter or you are not a presenter, definitely try to contribute by giving some additional information or by asking some questions to make the discussion, to make the brainstorming session more interactive. Remember, in online PBL or face-to-face PBL, if there is no interaction, means the whole purpose of PBL will be defeated. So make sure PBL should be more interactive. This is learner centered. Contribution of you students is very much important. Listen and respect contribution of others. Sometimes what happens, you know everything, and one of the students who is speaking wrong or little like out of the track, listen to him carefully. Don't disrespect. Okay, you don't know anything, I know everything. No, don't do like that. You listen to him carefully and give constructive feedback. Also ask questions and ask other friends. When you are presenting, ask your peer group, ask your friends to ask you questions. They will ask you some questions. By that, because it is a small group, you will build your confidence by asking questions and telling the answer. So whatever research you have done, share your research information in the Google Doc or whatever platform. I am telling again, don't read information from the textbook in step 6. While you are presenting your research information, don't read, just speak. That will give you more confidence. Okay, feedback. Group, as a group member, what kind of feedback you are going to give? First thing is, tutor will definitely give you feedback. Okay, Ramesh, Naresh, you have done this excellent. Okay, you have done this, you need improvement here. Tutor will give you feedback. And tutor will ask you, now it is the time to give feedback to each other. Means, okay, as a group member, you have to tell that, yes, leader, today you have done an excellent job. You maintain the discipline. You allow us to speak. And the group, the PBL was very much interactive because of your interference. So you have to give feedback to the leader, or if any leader, suppose, did not speak anything, silent, you have to give him feedback also. Leader, you need to participate more actively. Your role was little like lacking, so you need improvement. It is kind of help when you are giving feedback, whether positive or negative. You have to speak very constructive way so that the person who is taking feedback from you should not feel guilty. He should get more motivated to improve himself further. Similarly, you are going to give feedback to tutor also. Tutor may ask you, okay, students, how did I do as a tutor today? You have to tell, okay, tutor, you are so friendly. You guided us whenever we felt necessary, positively. Okay. So tutor, as a face, you are so lucky that even in small group, you are learning by yourself. There will be a tutor in your group who will guide you. So in case you have any difficulty, he will guide you how to get rid of that small issues or problem. Tutor will provide you comfortable learning environment. He will make you friendly environment, then motivate the leader. Tutor also sometimes motivate the leader. Leader, why you are silent? Okay, lead the group. Scribe, why you are not writing properly? Or sometimes scribe can ask some questions to tutor also. And most importantly, to the group members. Because as I told, few students, they don't participate. It is also the job of tutor. You will see tutor will ask sometime that, yes, Maria, why you are not participating? Why you are silent? Speak something. Also, tutor may ask some questions, thought-provoking question to that student who is not participating. Okay, so tutor will also see that you are following the 7 steps. As I told you, there are 7 steps. Tutor will make sure you are following, or in case while doing PBL, you miss any step. Now you understand. Now you know what are the steps. Even tutor miss any step, you have to remind the tutor. This tutor, Dr. So and so, we are going to miss these steps. I think we should do this step also. And tutor will also ask some question and promote your critical thinking skills, and he will give you feedback. These are the advantages. We have already discussed the advantages of PBL. Just have a look into this. Facilitates students learning, like how to learn. What is the difference between a lecture method and PBL? In PBL, you will be able to know how to learn. Your concept, what you learn is important, but more than that is how to learn. How did you learn? But if just remember in lecture method, what is important? What did you learn? But here, how to learn. That's why this is called lifelong learning. You will be able to know how to learn by yourself. And building of new knowledge on existing knowledge. I told you, you have some previous knowledge in your large group classroom. You have learned something. You are coming to PBL, discussing the problem, and now creating a new knowledge. That's a good thing. Then deeper learning and critical thinking. As you are involving here deeply, so you have now deep knowledge about the concept. Without having deep knowledge, you cannot contribute or justify properly in medical profession. So critical thinking. Every time you will get opportunity to think critically into PBL. Long-term learning, work cooperatively, like teamwork. You will feel in PBL sense of belongingness and friendship. Motivates students to learn. PBL, once you know the PBL process, once you study sincerely, do the research, you will enjoy the PBL. Active learning. This is two-way, multi-way interaction. Not like teacher will speak and students will listen. All the students will interact properly, actively, and most importantly, communication skills. This is the, I think, best platform. Just imagine in year 1, if you are getting opportunity 3 hours to speak in a small group, so speak, don't stop. Now, some of the limitations. Number 1 is connectivity. If you have connectivity issue, then forget about PBL or any kind of teaching. So first, to address this problem, connectivity issue, and you have make sure all the devices. Then problems of discipline. You have to learn self-discipline. Although leader will speak you for the discipline, but you have to learn. If you will not maintain discipline, then you will get distracted. PBL purpose will be defeated. Ineffective video interaction. This is out of our last session experience. That last session, tutor tried to make video interaction in the PBL class. So what happens? Students say the internet is very slow, some distraction. So the solution of this problem is, especially in this academic session, if tutor suggests you that, okay, this time only in the day 1 introduction class, we should see each other. Otherwise, mute your video and interact in audio mode. I would suggest the tutor to be in video mode so that all the students can see the tutor, whereas other students can make the video mute and make audio interaction. Another challenges we saw last year, difficulty sharing students' video. Okay, remember this point, that any presenter has any video, you don't need to share. You pass on your link to the scribe, and scribe should share. And I'm telling you, scribe must have good internet connection. In the PBL class also, when you are going to volunteer, sometimes students may volunteer, okay, today I want to be the scribe. Today I want to be the leader. So when you are volunteering, make sure that you have good internet connection. And in BBC, the tutor can see whose connection is better. So you can't say I have poor internet connection. In BBC, my e-learning system, there is some system, tutor can easily see that whose connection is better. So those students who have good internet connection, definitely volunteer yourself to be the leader or scribe for the PBL session. Or sometimes if all students remain silent, tutor asks any of the students to volunteer or to be the leader or scribe of the group. So if you have good internet connection, you can easily share the videos. You don't need to upload, share the videos, and all the students can see it easily. Challenging for year 1 students. This is our speculation that year 1 students, you don't know PBL, you may have some difficulties in first 2-3 weeks. Of course, if you don't go practically, you have definitely some difficulties, but I hope today you understood the steps, and at the same time, I am going to present you one video demonstration so that you can practically understand, try to learn, and I will also give you the link so that if you have time, you can see the video. And that's why I have requested to the head of the department that for year 1, those basically tutors don't interfere in the PBL class. It is students' job. I have given some instruction as a PBL expert that in year 1, if students have difficulty in any step, kindly tutors should support so that they can move further. Okay, another problem is quiet student. Some students, I am telling you, they don't speak. So in that case, what will happen? They can't speak for the whole PBL, so they can't learn anything. Please don't do like that. Speak whenever you want to speak. Don't think about whether whatever you are saying is wrong or right, because it is so a small group. You don't need to worry. You may be wrong. The whole PBL process is like that. Just remember step 4, possible explanation. Means that hypothesis could be right or wrong. So how do you know that your hypothesis is right or wrong? By doing the research. By doing research, you know whether whatever hypothesis you made right or wrong. So you don't need to worry whether your friends are speaking better than you or you are not able. Whatever you know, right or wrong, try to speak. That will help you to promote your communication skill, building your confidence skill. So definitely contribute in the discussion also, and also in the brainstorming session. Even if you are not a presenter, then also you ask questions to your colleagues, and also if you have any additional information, you can just give additional information. Another problem we saw that few students dominate the class. If you remain silent, other students will definitely speak. So all students is request that all students should try to speak. Don't worry about right or wrong. I'm promising you they will not dominate. Lateness, this is another problem. So timely login. Otherwise, again, the PBL process will get distracted and PBL process will go beyond 3 hours. So timely login. Okay, let's see how to make the PBL process successful. Connectivity, self-discipline, knowledge of technology for PBL. Technology means your devices, my e-learning, BBC, Blackboard Collaborate, everything, how to use and Then knowledge of PBL process. Now you know the process, you know the steps. Then present in all sessions. You know, PBL is very much important methods of approach of teaching and learning. If you miss, you are going to miss a big thing. So don't miss the PBL class. Commitment to self-directed learning. If PBL is more about self-directed, if you are going to do research and if you don't read properly, you can't contribute. You have to read by yourself, self-directed. Active participation, critical thinking, willingness to make constructive evaluation of self group and tutor. Means feedback. Don't forget to give feedback to your tutor, to the leader, to the scribe, to the group members. That's how PBL went, how students or group members did perform in this PBL. Share your ideas and information, and at the end, respect to the teamwork. Rihanna? Rihanna?
You finished? You finished?
No, now video. So before video, I'm giving you 2 minutes. If any question they have, they can ask. Send me a message, okay?
Okay.
There
So
are so many chats.
Yeah?
There were so many chats.
Okay. But how come I didn't? Okay, chat is not coming to me. Maybe.
Oh, you have not seen the chat?
No.
Okay, well, I will send it to you soon then. I have chat. Android?
I can't see.
You should not on that in the chat.
Maybe.
No, wait.
Click on the arrow that's
Yeah.
Oh, above, yeah.
This one.
Live chat, yeah.
Oh, that's fine.
Right, so you'll see messages coming up now.
Okay, let me see what is my copy is. Yeah? So you will finish in time supposed to finish, right?
No, okay. Now video means half an hour video. Yes. Okay. Students, I'm giving you 2 minutes. If you have any questions, please let me know. Okay, students, if you don't have any question, now I'm going to share a PBL video demonstration that will help you to understand practically the steps of PBL. So here is the video.
Hello students, welcome to your first year in medical school. One of the things you're going to be exposed to in medical school is problem-based learning. That's one of the main methods of instruction that we use here at the Faculty of Medical Sciences, St. Augustine. So to help you along, what we've decided to do is a short PBL problem-based learning demonstration video. My name is Dr. Farid Yusuf, and I will be serving as your tutor and your guide through this video. And with me, I have a wonderful group of students from... Hello students, welcome to your first year in medical school. One of the things you're going to be exposed to in medical school is problem-based learning. That's one of the main methods of instruction that we use here at the Faculty of Medical Sciences, St. Augustine. So to help you along, what we've decided to do is a short PBL problem-based learning demonstration video. My name is Dr. Farid Yusuf, and I will be serving as your tutor and your guide through this video. And with me, I have a wonderful group of students from second and third year who have volunteered for this process. So let's get into it straight away. One of the things you will discover in your medical training is that you learn by observation. So we're going to start, and as we begin, we're going to explain what is happening. The problem we'll be using today is beware the Amazon. And the first thing we have to do in a PBL session is choose a leader. So students, would anybody want to be the leader for this particular session?
Yeah, I'd like to volunteer as leader.
Okay, excellent. At this point, we're going to hand over to the leader who will run the entire process. The first step in the process of the PBL, which consists of 7 steps, is the identification of unfamiliar terms.
Okay, so would anyone like to be volunteer to be the reader?
I'd volunteer.
All right, reader, could you please read for us line by line, and anyone could pick out any unfamiliar terms they see?
Okay, problem 4, beware the Amazon. There are some tribes in the Amazon who dip their arrows in an extract from the plant Strychnos toxifera in order to immobilize animals when hunting. Jenna, an enthusiastic medical student, decided to test the effect of the extract on muscle contraction. She injected the extract into the limb of a frog. She noted that the extract prevented muscle contraction in response to nerve stimulation, but the muscle continued to respond when stimulated directly. In another series of experiments, the extract did not prevent the contraction of the frog's heart.
Okay. So anyone see any unfamiliar terms?
First of all, Strychnos toxifera.
Okay. Can we get a definition for Strychnos toxifera?
I have one. Strychnos toxifera, a genus of flowering plants that is a source of arrow poison, curare, also used in fish and rodent poison.
We could define muscle contraction.
Muscle contraction is the activation of tension-generating sites within the muscle fibers, which arises as a result of the interaction between thin and thick filaments.
So you will note that the students have identified 2 unfamiliar terms. And you'll also note that as soon as they identify the unfamiliar term, they make an attempt to provide a definition. With modern technology that's available to us today, no longer do we have to use a medical dictionary, but we can access these definitions via the internet. Let's move on to the second step in our PBL process.
So now we'll go back again through the paragraph to identify issues. Right. Reader, could you please read line by line?
Yeah, sure. There are some tribes in the Amazon who dip their arrows in an extract from the plant Strychnos toxifera in order to immobilize animals when hunting.
Any issues there?
How does Strychnos toxifera immobilize the animals?
Okay, we could word it a little differently. What extract from Strychnos toxifera?
Yeah.
Sorry, could you just...
Oh. we could change the wording to what extract from the Strychnos toxifera plant enables animals to be immobilized.
Okay.
And the process.
Right, and mechanism.
Do we want to change the wording of that issue a little bit? When you say the extract, what exactly are you referring to?
We could say the toxin.
Toxin from the plant.
Or maybe the active ingredient?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Could we edit it to say what is the active ingredient of Strychnos toxifera and
Okay.
how does it immobilize animals?
And what's the mechanism by which it immobilizes?
Mechanisms are significant word to keep.
And this is actually two issues in one, so it might be better to actually just separate it for ease of understanding. So what is the active ingredient of Strychnos toxifera? And what is the mechanism of action by which it immobilizes?
We could make one out of the difference between nerve stimulation and direct stimulation.
Yeah. And why does the muscle respond?
You want to read the next line?
Huh?
You want to read the next line?
Yes, please.
Yes, please.
All right. So Jenna, an enthusiastic medical student, decided to test the effect of the extract on muscle contraction. Anything?
You can continue.
Okay.
So,
Sorry.
no issues in that sentence there? I would have thought there's at least one issue. For those of you watching, the issues are questions you might ask. So you notice that the issues are being put in the form of a question.
She injected the extract. How did she prepare the extract?
Okay. Anything else?
We're looking for what is the mechanism of muscle contraction.
Well, not in that particular, I didn't see that in that line. But I thought you might ask about what was the mechanism or what was the process by which she was going to test this extract. You all think you want to add that as an issue?
I think in the question it's saying she injected. So
Also, you think it will come up later?
Yeah.
No problem.
Yes.
No problem.
Explain.
Alright, so next sentence. She injected the extract into the limb of a frog. She noted that the extract prevented muscle contraction in response to nerve stimulation, but the muscle continued to respond when stimulated directly.
Any problems?
What is the significance of injecting the extract into the limb of the frog as opposed to another body part?
So I'm not a big fan of the term, what is the significance? Because you could ask that for everything. So maybe you could try and phrase that issue a little bit differently.
Why did she inject the extract into the limb of the frog as opposed to another body part?
Why do you think?
I believe, well, she was probably targeting the skeletal muscle compared to injecting into the heart or injecting into a smooth muscle.
So when we get into the hypotheses, we'll explore that more.
Yeah.
Very good. We now want to move on to step 3 of the PBL process. Having identified the main issues in the problem, we now seek to come up with hypotheses or explanations of what's going on in the problem. Using the prior knowledge that you already have, you now seek to try and explain or give understanding to the problem. Seeking to answer the issues provides one method of coming up with the explanations for this problem. So let's look at step 3.
And would you like to propose any hypotheses they have?
Yeah, I remember from the definition Trishana gave for Strychnos toxifera, she mentioned that the active ingredient was curare. So we could use that in the first hypothesis to say curare is the active ingredient of Strychnos toxifera.
You all in agreement with it?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's important that your hypotheses are not wild guesses, but they're building upon your prior knowledge, and they make good logical scientific sense. One of the issues we came up with, you'll remember students, is we wanted to know why was there a cessation of contraction from nerve stimulation, but not from direct stimulation. Would anybody like to hypothesize on that?
Well, as I remember from high school, it's the stimulation from the nerves responsible for causing muscle contraction. So from that, we could extrapolate that curare somehow interferes with that interaction between nerve and muscle. So a possible hypothesis could be curare inhibits the conduction of synaptic transmission between the nerve terminal and muscle tissue.
The synaptic cleft or synaptic junction, yeah.
Right, yeah.
Building upon that, what then is happening when we have direct stimulation of the muscle?
The route by which the toxin works is no longer being used, and as such, the toxin has no effect.
Right. At this point, it's not important whether your hypothesis is correct or incorrect. What's important is based on your prior knowledge, it's making logical sense. We now want to move on to stage 4 of the PBL process. In stage 4, we now generate learning objectives, things that you, the students, feel you need to go away and study in order to better understand the problem. So let's look at stage 4 of the PBL process.
Okay, so based on these hypotheses we have, how are we going to go about resolving them?
I think one primary objective is, like Trishana mentioned, the different types of muscles, targeted any problem. We could go and say, compare and contrast the different types of muscle tissue, include cardiac, skeletal, and smooth.
Okay.
Makes sense.
Yes.
You think that's good?
Yeah.
All right, open that one. Any other objectives?
Well, based on what we just discussed with the different types of stimulation, we could explain the difference between direct stimulation and nerve stimulation.
You think that's you can do some research on that, but is there a better way of getting of phrasing what we're going after there as a learning objective?
Is it the types of synaptic transmission, like chemical?
Describe the mechanism of synaptic transmission.
That might be a bit better.
Yeah.
Anything else?
We should also include the sites at which solution can be blocked. Like you mentioned curare before, so we should know exactly where it acted.
So,
The anatomy of a synaptic cleft.
Describing mechanism of action of the synaptic cleft. Some transmission already there.
So we have synaptic transmission.
at the
I think
synaptic
that,
cleft.
that would include the anatomy.
Are you sure that when you do the mechanism of action, you'll also remember to do the structure of the synapse, or do we want a separate objective for that?
Lena,
I
what
think
do
we
you
should
think?
separate it
Yeah, I think we should separate it because
to make sure we don't miss out anything.
they're similar, but they're also distinct in their own right.
So discuss the structure of the synaptic cleft.
Instead of synaptic cleft, we could be more specific and say neuromuscular junction.
Alright.
Would that include the sites at which synaptic transmission can be hindered or blocked?
Yes, it will.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I might think that that's a separate objective.
Entirely. And this
Usually, what do you think we should do?
Well, yeah, I thought we were going to go ahead with that objective, the separate one.
Okay.
Sites.
Maybe, Meenakshi, we could add in
Like you mentioned curare before, so we should know exactly where it acted.
so
The anatomy of a synaptic cleft.
anatomy. describing mechanism of action on the synaptic cleft. Some transmission already there.
So we have synaptic transmission.
At the
I think
synaptic
that,
cleft.
yeah, that would include the anatomy.
Are you sure that when you do the mechanism of action, you'll also remember to do the structure of the synapse? Or do we want a separate objective for that?
I think we should separate it.
Yeah, I think we should separate it because
to make sure we don't miss out anything.
they're similar, but they're also distinct in their own right.
So discuss the structure of the synaptic cleft.
Instead of synaptic cleft, we could be more specific and say neuromuscular junction.
Alright.
Would that include the sites at which synaptic transmission can be hindered or blocked?
Yes, it will.
Yeah.
Well, I might think that that's a separate objective.
Entirely. And this
Usually, what do you think we should do?
Well, yeah, I thought we were going to go ahead with that objective, the separate one.
Okay.
Sites.
Maybe we could add in what agents block it, and in that objective discuss where the agents would block.
Yeah, that's better.
So list
The sites. Actually, how we had it first.
List the site, list the agent and site at which synaptic transmission can be hindered or blocked.
what you specific mention to Gary?
Well, that'll be involved.
We can still list the compounds and toxins.
Yeah.
That hinder synaptic.
Hinders or blocked.
And the sites of action.
Yeah.
So from this process, you can see we'll generate quite a good list of learning objectives. For any one problem, you might generate between 6 to 10 learning objectives. And so this process from steps 1 to 4 concludes what we call the brainstorming part of the PBL process. Let me just recap for you. The brainstorming part consists of getting together and getting to know your group, reading the problem, and then step 1 is the identification and clarification of unfamiliar terms. Step 2 is going through the problem to identify what you think are the critical issues in the problem. Step 3 is the generation of hypotheses or explanations based upon your current knowledge. And finally, step 4 is the generation of learning objectives. At this point, the PBL session will end for the day. And now the students will retire and spend the next week studying and researching the learning objectives. When we gather again in a week's time, we will now discuss the learning objectives and seek to provide better understanding of what's taking place in the problem. Welcome back. It's a week later, and we want to continue our journey through PBL. Just to remind you, PBL is a learning process that we use here at the Faculty of Medical Sciences. Following the process is very, very important. It's not something that you should abort. So last week, or a few minutes ago, you saw the first steps of the process. Over the past week, the students have been working very hard. They have been checking their books. They have been doing research on the internet. And now we're able to, having completed step 5, self-directed learning, begin step 6, problem resolution and knowledge consolidation. So let me hand over to the leader of the group once again.
Okay, so just to recap, so we're all familiar, could the reader please reread the entire paragraph?
Sure. Problem 4, beware the Amazon. There are some tribes in Amazon who dip their arrows in an extract from the plant Strychnos toxifera in order to immobilize animals when hunting. Jenna, an enthusiastic medical student, decided to test the effect of the extract on muscle contraction. She injected the extract into the limb of a frog. She noted that the extract prevented muscle contraction in response to nerve stimulation, but the muscle continued to respond when stimulated directly. In another series of experiments, the extract did not prevent contraction of the frog's heart.
All right, so now we'll go on to present what we discovered in our research. Who would like to present this?
Okay, I would present the first objective. So to reread, compare and contrast the different types of muscle tissue. So I have some diagrams here that we can use as a guideline. So first we have the cardiac muscle. So as you can see from the diagram, the cardiac muscle has striations. There's also intercalated discs at the adjoining fibers, and the nucleus is centrally placed. The nucleus, the tissue fiber itself is either mononucleated or it could sometimes be binucleated. So, as you can see by the name cardiac muscle is found in the heart. So it aids in the pumping of blood. To move on to another type of muscle, we have the skeletal muscle. So the skeletal muscle is also striated in appearance. However, you can see that the nucleus is peripherally located. There's also multinucleation happening here. As you can see, it forms a triad complex as opposed to the cardiac, which forms a dyad complex. And skeletal muscle, by the means, as you can see, is found along the bones and aids in movements as well. Then we have another classification, the smooth muscle. So smooth muscle, the development is poor, and it's also mononucleated and it's placed centrally. With smooth muscle, it is widely distributed in the internal organs. Anybody has anything they'd like to add in?
To this, smooth muscle is also involuntary. Cardiac muscle is also involuntary. Skeletal muscle is voluntary.
Okay. Very good.
Well, let me just ask one or two questions. You mentioned the term striations. What exactly do we mean by striations? Anybody can answer.
So based on the research that I found, within the muscle, there are different types of bands. We have some light bands, we have some dark bands, and it's because of how these light and dark bands alternate, it gives the appearance of lines. That's what we call striations in the muscle fibers.
Excellent.
Basically the overlapping of thin and thick filaments.
Yes.
Therefore, you can just tell one type of muscle from another simply by looking at it under a microscope.
True.
Another thing I thought you might have asked, but maybe you know already, so forgive me if I don't know. You mentioned the term triads. What exactly is a triad?
Triad is a feature of the sarcolemma. Like all muscle tissue is made up of cells, and like all cells, they have a cell membrane. The cell membrane of a muscle cell is called the sarcolemma, and its distinguishing feature of skeletal muscle is the sarcolemma invaginates into the cell, and that invagination forms like three fingers, and that's why it's referred to as a triad. This formation is essential in muscle contraction.
Excellent, very good. So as you can see, the students will now go through a process of discussion, presentation, questioning one another in order to expose and share their understanding of their week's research. At the end of going through all the learning objectives, the students should have a very, very good understanding of what is actually taking place inside of this particular problem. What they will now be required to do is to go back over their explanations or the hypotheses that they generated and see if the hypotheses are actually correct. Remember, when they first did this a week ago, it was based on prior knowledge. But now they've spent a week studying, they can tell whether their explanation is correct or not. If it is incorrect, they're required to rewrite the hypothesis correctly based on what they have learned. At the end of the entire process, they now should be able to explain the problem. And that's step 7, which you'll see in your PBL manual. In step 7, they want to apply their new knowledge to the problem. So I'm going to ask the leader to take us through step 7.
Okay. So now, after we did a week's research, right, just to ensure that we completely understand the problem at hand, back through it and describe each step, each part of it. So Rita, you can take us through line by line.
Yeah, sure. All right. So there are some tribes in Amazon who dip their arrows in an extract from the plant Strychnos toxifera in order to immobilize animals when hunting. Jenna, an enthusiastic medical student, injected the extract into the limb of a frog. She noted that the extract prevented muscle contraction in response to nerve stimulation, but the muscle continued to respond when stimulated directly. In another series of experiments, the extract did not prevent contraction of the frog's heart.
So in the first line, anybody would like to offer their conclusions on that?
Well, from our research, we found out that the extract was curare, and it immobilized the animals by preventing synaptic transmission. So therefore, no muscle contraction.
So it's important that now you're in medical school, you use correct language. So the extract here contains the active ingredient strychnos. Well, the extract is from the plant Strychnos toxifera, but the extract itself isn't curare. What really is curare? We used it previously last week. What's a better term to describe curare?
The toxin.
The toxin, or maybe the active ingredient. Very good. Go ahead.
And also a bit of peripheral information, right? I also discovered through research. We also brought up the issue of why the Jenna injected into the frog's legs. The interesting thing about the toxin curare, right, is if it's ingested orally, it has no effect. Right? It needs to be received either intramuscularly or intravenously to be effective. So that would be the reason for the Amazonians dipping their arrows into it, and that would also be the reason why Jenna had to inject it.
I think to add to what John was saying in more depth, the curare, the toxin, it usually binds to the nicotinic receptors on the postsynaptic membrane and competitively and reversibly inhibits acetylcholine. And that's why we don't have any generation of action potential postsynaptic.
So no muscle contraction.
Yeah, no muscle.
And also, curare affected animals, right? The curare toxin is broken up by the cooking process, so it does not alter the taste, nor is it poisonous to anybody who ingests an animal who has been hunted with curare.
So you can see just by looking at that one line, how the students this week know a lot more than they did last week. And as we go through this line by line, you see the students have gained a wealth of knowledge. One of the things that's important about the PBL process is you, the student, now take responsibility for your learning. And as you saw in the discussion, different people went and did some extra research on curare and its effects. So that completes the PBL process, steps 1 through step 7. What we want to do now is just spend a couple minutes getting some feedback from the students of how they enjoyed the process. Did they think it worked? What was particularly interesting about this problem? So I'll begin by saying, students, I think you did a good job. You seem to work well together as a team, and the leader was doing a good job. As far as this particular problem was concerned, did you find the problem useful?
Yes, I did. The problem addressed a lot of the topics that we covered in school, and with using an active or live example of the toxin curare, we were able to identify how it inhibits muscle contraction and also how muscle contraction occurs without inhibition or without toxins.
Okay. Was there anything particularly challenging about this problem for you?
No, there was not.
No, not really.
No.
If you had to make any suggestions about the problem going forward, would you have anything in particular you wanted to say?
No, I guess the problem was well suited to our syllabus, and it was interesting to learn, and it wasn't very hard to grasp the information.
Finally, any comments? Were you happy with the leader and the scribe?
Yes, we will. Very much so.
This is your opportunity to say.
Very much so.
The reason we give this feedback is PBL is not just a process of learning. It also allows you to develop other skills. You can develop leadership skills, communication skills, and also your ability to summarize and collate information. So at the end of a program involved in PBL, you should not just be very knowledgeable, but you should have the capacity to lead others and also be a very, very good communicator. One of the very important things that you will have realized about PBL during your first couple of weeks of medical school is that in our medical school, the PBL process is assessed. During any course, your PBL contributes 10% of your final mark. The group PBL process that you've just witnessed contributes 10% of your final mark. How is that 10% generated? Well, you will see that there's a form that will be provided to you. And on that form, you are to record your process. What do we mean by that? You record the unfamiliar terms, you record the issues, and you record your hypotheses that you generate during the brainstorming process. But most importantly, when you have completed the entire PBL process, you are now required to rewrite your hypotheses or explanations. At this point, you know all the information, you have studied the problem, and we want to discover what you have learned from the problem. So you go through each hypothesis or explanation. Those that you are happy with, you leave, but those that are wrong or you are not happy with, you put a line through them and you rewrite them. Once you have completed that process, at the end of the PBL class, you will submit that form to the course convener, who will then mark it and give you a grade. At the end of the course, the average of each problem will give you a score out of 10. Please note that this is a group score, so whatever score is attributed to the group is also attributed to the individual. So it's a process that also encourages teamwork and you learning to work together and work as a team. Hello, my name is Dr. Fareed Yusuf. I'm a senior lecturer in the physiology unit of the Department of Preclinical Sciences, and I've been serving as a PBL tutor for over 15 years.
Hi, my name is Reducing. I'm a second year medical student.
Hi, I'm Meenakshi Mohan. I'm a third-year medical student.
Hi, my name is Amrika Rohan. I'm a second-year medical student.
Hi, my name is Aranda Ramjit Singh, and I'm a year 2 medical student.
Good day, my name is Saeed Mohammed and I'm a second-year medical student.
Hi, my name is John Mohammed and I'm a third-year medical student.
Hi, my name is Shoshana Gopi and I'm a third-year medical student.
So that brings us to the end of our PBL video demonstration. I hope now there's rapturous applause in the audience for our students. And we look forward to the question and answer session that will now be facilitated. Thank you. Thank you, students.
So thank you very much. Now, I think you know about the PBL process. You saw the video. And now back to Rihanna. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Sahu. Students, we have a house announcement. You will be receiving an email for Friday's Zoom session. And it will give you the link that each of you have to sign into. Each of the different programs will have a separate Zoom link. So we will have Zoom links for optometry students, for vet students, for dental students, so that when it is you are on your schedule on Friday, you will have breakout sessions. Yeah. And in a short bit, we will be handing over to Dr. Dave Hananan. Right? He is a lecturer in general surgery and vascular surgeon attached to the Department of Clinical Surgical Sciences in the Faculty of Medical Sciences. Dr. Hananan is the coordinator of the Skills Laboratory and was instrumental in developing the new course for basic paraclinical sciences, for which he is also the course convener. Dr. Hananan was instrumental in establishing the first multidisciplinary foot and wound clinic in Trinidad and Tobago, and he's involved in managing vascular and kidney transplant services as well as multi-organ harvesting. So the Skills Lab is going to be one of the places that, you have your essential core courses that you have to complete. We have also with us this morning Dr. Risha Rafiq. She's a senior lecturer at the School of Dentistry. She will be presenting with Dr. Hananan, and they will be on live shortly. Okay, students, we're having some technical difficulties. We will be starting the live shortly. In the interim, Dr. Sahul, who has just presented to us, has sent a link for the PBL video demonstration, which I will share with you now. Please note that all orientation sessions will also be posted online. And the link was just posted in the comments. Okay, and I believe that the Skills Lab is ready for their presentation.
And what we do at the Skills Lab. Okay, so I am Dr. Dave Harnanan. I am the present coordinator of the Skills Lab. And accompanying me here is Dr. Kurt Botkin, who is a pediatric oncologist. He was the previous coordinator of the Skills Lab, instrumental in setting up a lot of what we are going to experience in your 3 years of training. Additionally, we have Dr. Rafiq here, who is also the unit head and senior lecturer for restorative dentistry. So all three of us are going to kind of outline our approach and what we normally do at the Skills Lab and what role you're going to play in your training as time go along. The role of the Skills Lab. Now, we all know in this present time, it's going to be very challenging. Simulated training is going to play a much more bigger role in how we train students. And throughout the world, this has been a trend that has been happening. Our main role is to introduce you to the foundational skills that are required in interacting and in examining patients. We're going to try to make it easier for you to transition to your clinical rotations, and with that, also in your career as a doctor. You're going to be learning all of what is required in interacting with patients that are critically ill and looking at a lot of factors that might help us to determine the best way forward in managing these patients. The University of the West Indies graduates are well known to be excellent clinicians because of our ability to have good clinical acumen, and this is well recognized. We are in a unique environment in the Caribbean where we have the ability to have patients that are willing to allow us to examine them and do all that are required. Combining that with what we do at the Skills Lab, we will now be able to give you some of the best training that you can, that you will receive. An overview of the Skills Lab, what the course is. It is now an independent course that accounts for 6 credits. The course begins in year 1 and terminates in year 3. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, each one of the years, year 1, year 2, and year 3 will pass through the Skills Lab between the periods of 1 to 4 p.m. And we will normally divide the class into 2 major groups and then subdivide those 2 major groups into 12 different groups. And we will have small group sessions between 1 to 2:30 and then 2:30 to 4. So pretty much every preclinical medical student will go through the Skills Lab in a given week. During that time, you will be exposed to some didactic lecturers. The majority of what we do involve the use of simulated patients. These are normal patients that have come for you to interact with them. This is usually your first interaction with real patients. Many of them will not have pathology, and our aim here is to teach you normal. So when you encounter abnormal, you will recognize what is abnormal. We are also going to heavily base a lot of our teaching now on video-based learning, and we'll talk a little more about that. So essentially, what we're going to do with what we're faced with COVID, and probably in the future we'll continue with this, is utilizing a model that the American College of Surgeons have popularized in their teaching of the ATLS course. This is essentially where there are 5 main steps in teaching a clinical skill. And this involves conceptualizing what you need to do, visualizing, verbalizing, practicing it, and then being corrected or reinforced. Those are the 5 main steps, and the rest of it, 6 and 7, mastering the skills and autonomy, you will get when you get to your clinical rotations on the ward. So how we're going to practice that in the Skills Lab is we're going to get you to conceptualize by using your learning resource, which is the McLeod's clinical examination textbook. You will be given a curriculum and a task that we're going to do for that week or so, and you will read up on it beforehand. So you now know why, how, when, what you're supposed to do. That will give you the conceptualization. With respect to visualization, we are going to be uploading a link where you will now have a video of one of our lecturers demonstrating the skill that you are required to know. So you're now going to see it being done virtually. Following that, you will have a small group session with a tutor who will then walk you through step by step as to what is required in completing the examination, and also giving you little tidbits as to how to be better at demonstrating the various skills. A little small, open it up. I won't be able to see all this. 1 second, guys. And then once we've done the verbalization part, we will then give you a 3-week period where it is that you will go and practice on your colleagues, your relatives. It's still a little small. End the presentation more than this good slideshow. So just duplicate it. Yeah. Right. So once you've gotten that time now where you've gone through all the steps, you get to practice it on your relatives and colleagues at home. And then you're required at the end of that 3-week period to create a video that you will upload to your tutors, who will then look at these videos and give you critiques, corrections, and reinforcement during that time. So in that way, we've covered the 5 steps of teaching a clinical skill. When the COVID environment settles and we are now able to have face-to-face interaction, you will then be required to come to the Skills Lab in your divided groups, and your tutor will give you real-time critique and reinforcement using our simulated patients. So this is the model that we're going to utilize in our virtual training during this time. As with everything that goes wrong, there's also good things that can come of it. And I'm sure that we'll utilize a lot of this model for when we are back to normal, and we'll continue to evolve as time happens. We are also creating a module within the Skills Lab. This is going to be a 6-week period in each year where we're going to talk about some of what we term karma skills. This is an acronym for communication, altruism, leadership, mentorship, ethics, and resilience. Essentially, this is going to be a course, a module where we're going to try to educate you and help you to deal with some of the modern day challenges that doctors are going to face by the time you graduate. It's going to be mainly a case scenario based teaching where we will generally be done virtually to start. We're going to ask some of our senior lecturers to come and talk about some topical issues that you will have to encounter more and more as time go along. And these include, and not limited to this, many of your patients will come who are Google informed, social media and patient confidentiality, dealing with LGBT and all the other these patients. Medical legal issues are also becoming a major concern. There are a number of modern problems that you will be faced with practicing in a COVID world. All of these things you're going to be faced with in your training, and we're going to try to start introducing you to some of these concepts so that you can deal with them better when you get onto the clinical rotations and as a doctor in the future. So at the end of the day, our overall goal is to allow for a more harmonious transition to the clinical rotations. It can be overwhelming at times because you are now going to be in a classroom-based environment for the next 3 years with some patient interaction, and then all of a sudden you're expected to be on the ward knowing everything about everything and about everyone. So it can be overwhelming at times, and this is our role in the Skills Lab is to kind of make that transition as harmonious as possible. We also, within that 3-year period, the course is integrated with both pre and paraclinical courses. So whenever you're doing cardiovascular block, you will be doing cardiovascular examination in the Skills Lab. So in that way, there's going to be an integrated approach as to how you're going to be taught, trying to make sense and link everything into one. Now, it is, as you can imagine, having said all of that, it's a lot of work, a lot of information, a lot of skills that you're required. Broad concept is professionalism, ethics, communication. There'll be a bit of overlap with your PEC courses. The other group is going to look at basic clinical skill examinations, some surgical skills, and then the procedural skills. Those are the 3 main groups of clinical skills that we're going to cover. But it's quite a lot and a lot of information, and as a result, it's quite packed. So missing days and not coming to certain sessions can leave you at a disadvantage. The lab, our infrastructure is not massive, but it's quite nice. Our staff, Miss Archibald and Mr. Lakai, those are 2 main people. They are the people that we go to for everything. I like to call them the minister of everything. So any questions, any queries, any concerns, they are the one that we go to sort out. We have been able to expand the Skills Lab now from an 8-room, an area where we can accommodate 8 cubicles to now having 6 cubicles. So it's a bigger space and we can accommodate students much better. Similarly, we use the seminar rooms as part of our teaching tool, because teaching space, because there's a lot of students that we have to accommodate. And it has now allowed us to be able to run a 16-station OSCE, which we'll talk about in a bit. And this is just a general layout of what the lab looked like. Now, just to kind of put things into perspective as to why you need to know all of this that we're talking about and how important it is, we thought that we just highlight a potential case that you might encounter in your training or as a doctor, and this kind of help us to figure out what we're going to do for this patient. So, for example, you are in your office as a dentist, and a 65-year-old man comes in to have a dental extraction done. And he's diabetic, he's hypertensive, he's known to have mitral regurgitation, so he has a cardiac issue, and he's presently on warfarin, which is an anticoagulant, to keep his blood as thin as possible. Now, in preparation for his dental extraction, he had his anticoagulation stopped to minimize whatever chances of bleeding that is happening. Very anxious guy, so while he was having the procedure done, he suddenly became unresponsive and couldn't feel any pulses at that time. So the question is, what do you do? Probably I can ask Dr. Rafiq if she's ever had a situation like this and how she might have dealt with it.
Hopefully not. Right, morning. Thank you, Dr. Han, and welcome to all the students and medical and dental students. So this is quite a typical case that would come in your office, really. And you got to get your medical history right. You got to find out all your drug history. And what's important is really listening to your patient before you start any procedures, really listening to the history properly and speaking to your patients. So there's so much going on in this one scenario: patient diabetic, hypertensive, mitral regurgitation, and warfarin. So it says it stopped his blood thinners, to use the colloquial language, or anticoagulation. But really and truly, we would have had to speak to the patient beforehand, before you even stop warfarin for dental extractions. Now, we would want to actually check what we call the INR, the International Normalized Ratio. So really for dental extractions now, we would work with their physician and their cardiologist and check the INR just before they have the extraction. And if it's within a certain range, which is 3.5 or less, we would be able to do the procedure without stopping the anticoagulation therapy, because we know how important it is to not have, thrombus or embolus develop. So that's the importance of actually working with your medical colleagues closely as well to look after your patients. So in the older days, I would say maybe that was the recommendation, but we know now because of the research, evidence-based research, that in certain scenarios, we wouldn't want to stop it. We would be able to control any prolonged bleeding by localized measures in the dental chair, but we'd be prepared for it. So there's a lot going on in this one slide. The other thing we'd consider mitral regurgitation. Again, the older teaching would have been, we had to do what we call antibiotic prophylaxis to prevent a bacterial infection from developing on the heart valves. But again, evidence-based dentistry and medicine has shown us that for certain conditions, we don't need to do the antibiotic prophylaxis anymore. So it highlights the need to actually keep up with the latest guidelines based on the evidence. And then of course, that's all the history taking and finding out beforehand, working with your medical colleagues. We wouldn't even want for this person to end up in the situation we have when they have a collapse, and what do we do now, right? So the skills lab is so important, not just for the medical students, for the dental students, because we have these types of patients coming in. They're not all young, healthy, with no medical history involved that you treat. That might be the routine, but we certainly have a lot of patients with their
and I suppose also because although you're a dentist and you would think that your work is confined to the oral cavity, you must have an idea of what is happening with the patient, and if the patient does collapse in your office, you know what to actually do. So I think.
So, I mean, in this situation here, I would anticipate that a proper cardiovascular examination will help us to identify our mitral regurgitation murmur and other issues there. Bleeding, obviously, with the anticoagulation, and this patient has become unresponsive with an absent pulses. So our basic life support will need to kick in and manage this patient to save his life. So this can be a life and death issue. So that's just to show that the basic skills that you learn in the skills lab can be contributory in your general assessment and management of any patient that is in front of you.
I think it's also important to mention as well that it's systems based, so that you would have all of these things as you learn in blocks, and you'd have the cardiovascular bit, you'd have to know the anatomy, you'd have to know for the mitral regurg, you'll have to know the physiology aspect of it, and then your paraclinical with the bleeding, and of course the basic life support is very important for students.
And it's so critical for dental students too, because it's not just, well, I'm not going to encounter that situation. We can very well encounter that.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's critical.
Okay. This is another case scenario. Now, you have a 70-year-old man who goes to his GP office, and you're the doctor in the GP office, and he is very, very concerned that he has COVID. He has no respiratory tract symptoms. He has nothing to suggest that he has COVID to be concerned. He's just worried because of his age. So probably I can ask Dr. Botkin how we would handle a situation like this.
I think this probably typifies a number of Trinidadian and people in Trinidad and Tobago at present. And I think with all the hype that you hear, and especially patients with comorbidities and this age, certainly there'll be a lot of concern. So apart from taking a detailed history to make sure that the patient doesn't have the symptoms that would make you also think that he could be COVID positive, you clearly have to deal with some of the anxiety issues here. So this is where learning techniques of communication, trying to find out the source of anxiety, which is covered both in the skills lab as well as in the PEC courses, become very important, I think, as well.
Yeah. So patient education and gaining their trust, taking a proper history, making your patient feel comfortable. All of these things are dealt with in the skills lab. And obviously, if he comes in with a potential respiratory problem, you have to be able to examine your patients properly, identify if there's any real reason for his concern, and then reassure him appropriately. So again, these things are things that we would have would cover in the skills lab. This is another case scenario. 30-year-old man comes to his dentist because of pain and swelling in his left cheek and jaw. He is noted to have a large dental cavity at his molar with features of an abscess formation. And he has tender lymphadenopathy along his neck, and he also has stridor. Dr. Rafiq?
Yes. So again, a very busy scenario, yeah? It could be so simple in terms of having a cavity where you have an abscess formation and there's no further sort of difficulty for the patient. And they may come in to see you, quite a common situation. You take your history, you do your head and neck examination, hence why skills lab again is important to detect the lymphadenopathy. You open and you see the intraoral features of the abscess formation. But what is particular about this case is the stridor, the difficulty in the breathing for the patient. So this is something you have to very quickly, again, recognize. It's becoming critical. So this is not a case where you say, oh, I can just prescribe and send the patient home some antibiotics. You've got to actually intervene again. This patient may actually need admitting to the ward and a possible surgical drain placed. So it's a lot of history taking again, but immediate identification of the fact that there's a difficulty with breathing and the airway is constricted.
I think this is also a very good case that typifies that this patient may not have come to you initially. Because of the stridor, he might have actually just ended up with a medical, private practitioner.
Yes, a medical doctor's office, correct.
And actually, this is why it's important to have the cross-specialization habitat that you have in the skills lab, where the dental students are mixing with the medical students and transferring knowledge to actually help with that as well.
Positive for this faculty, that the medical and dental students, and then going forward, you become colleagues. So you're close, you can have a very close working relationship and get advice.
Yeah. So it also typifies that the type of patients that we all would see in our environment. Many a times our patients present with extreme situations, multiple comorbidities happening at the same time, and the extent of their pathology is quite advanced. So, and many of the patients don't read the book and come, right? So they come with a lot of things, and you have to be good at your clinical acumen to identify. It's very easy to say this guy has an abscess and ignore the stridor, but if you do that, the patient can die. So your clinical acumen has to be really good here to identify the critical issues by examining the oral cavity, doing a proper examination of the neck, and identifying that this patient may have a life-threatening issue with respect to airway control and management. So again, it just shows that your clinical acumen must be on par here. Otherwise, we can end up in a very difficult situation. From a surgeon, so this is the 40-year-old guy who fell off, who's a construction worker and fell off a scaffolding, landing on his right shoulder. He presents with severe pain and he's unable to move his right arm. And on examination, he's noted to have a deformity of his shoulder with an anterior bulge. Now, a couple of things here. He's a construction worker who falls from a height. You're seeing this obvious deformity in front of you, so it's very easy for us to narrowing on the joint and forget the rest. So it's important for us to have a global assessment of our patient following basic principles of trauma and life support, where we look at airway, breathing, circulation, we assess the patients, and then once we've done a primary survey, and once we've not identified any further injuries, then you can focus on the shoulder. Adequate examination of the shoulder is important too, because you have to identify that this is actually, it could be a fracture, or it could be a fracture dislocation, or just a simple dislocation. And then the emergency management of it. So emergency management of any patient with trauma is important. Assessment of the patient's shoulder joint, and similarly, this would apply to other joints. Musculoskeletal examination, these things are covered in the skills lab. And then basic maneuvers to reduce the shoulder joint. So this is something that could be dealt with in an accident and emergency situation very easily. If it's missed, it can cause the patient a lot of grief and long-term morbidity. So again, showing the importance of having good clinical acumen. This is another, so we're just trying to cover some of the things that to link some of the things that we will teach in the skills lab to some of the patients that you might actually really see. So this is another patient who presented to the on-call doctor at a busy accident and emergency. She's 50 years old, and she presented with sudden onset of weakness and numbness on her left side. And probably Dr. Bhatt, probably both of us could talk a little bit about it.
Yes, I think it's, again, another common and interesting case. And when you think of weakness and numbness, I mean, initially you must be able to do a full neurological examination. But we always start with I think I always tell all my junior doctors, the best place to start is the history. If you're not able to do a good history, you don't know where to look. And you must be able to do that well. So starting with the history, taking a very detailed history, looking for comorbidities, etc. And then examination of the neurological system, I mean, becomes very important as well in this patient, and of the joint. I mean, so the surgical aspect of it as well, because we know with some joint disease, you can actually get neurological type symptoms.
So assessment for good neurological examination. And I would like to say, to just reiterate Dr. Botkin's point, I'd like to say that 95% of the diagnosis is made on the history. So your 5% in your clinical examination is just to confirm what you already kind of know. So history taking is very important, and especially in a patient like this, they can present with what we call a transient ischemic attack. So by the time the patient comes, they will give you a history of weakness and numbness, but they may not have any physical findings. The contrary actually exists too. So they may not have any more symptoms, but when you examine them, you may be able to identify lateralizing signs. So being able to do a good neurological examination, both cranial nerves and of the motor and sensory system, is important to help us to identify what's going on with these patients, because timely management of neurological conditions can prevent or reverse a lot of pathology that is happening. So again, this is just tying into your clinical acumen being on par. Now, guys, just to reiterate, if there are any questions along the way, please feel free to type it in so that we can answer all the questions at the end, okay? And this will be our last one to cover. Again, a surgical thing here. This is a 50-year-old man who presented with yellowing of the eyes. He has pale stool, dark urine, and he's itching for about 3 weeks duration. He has noticed significant weight loss during this time. So already from this case, pale stools, dark urine, yellowing of the eye, we're thinking of jaundice. He has pale stool, dark urine, so we're thinking of obstructive jaundice. Because it's progressing for a period of over 3 weeks duration and significant weight loss, we're starting to think of a malignant problem here. So just by simply taking a history, we can already diagnose this patient as likely having a malignant condition. Many of the malignant conditions associated with jaundice needs to be diagnosed early in order to have a good outcome. So if we get them early enough, we can do surgical resection and have a curative intent. There is a lot of social issues associated with jaundice. Many of you may know about people going to have a jarry and drinking different things and waiting at home. So educating your patients, again, identifying what's the problem early, taking a good history helps us to make a diagnosis and helps us to refer them on quickly. There are going to be examination findings on this patient that are there. For example, if there is a malignant condition, you may be able to palpate the gallbladder. And that tells us automatically that this patient is very likely to have a malignant condition. There are many other clinical findings that could help us to identify whether this might be a malignancy. So it's like putting the pieces of a puzzle together to make a final picture, a final diagnosis. And that is what medicine is all about. So taking a nice detailed history can help us one time to make a diagnosis and be aggressive in our management. Abdominal examination, you will find the palpable gallbladder, you'll see the scratch marks, you can see the Virchow's, you can palpate the Virchow node. And when you examine this patient digital rectally, you'll probably be able to feel the Blumer shelf that is there. So just by your clinical acumen can help make a diagnosis on this patient. So again, all these things are covered in the skills lab to help us to be able to be much better equipped to deal with these patients when the pathology arises.
I think the cases nicely show as well that before medicine used to be taught, you learn all your anatomy, all your physiology, but I think learning by the cases actually helped the students, and PBL is one of the ways that you find all the cases sort of tie in to everything as well, which is very helpful.
And allows for a more global assessment of what we do. So the skills lab curriculum, as I said before, we utilize a number of things, didactic lectures. We use a lot of simulated patients. We're going to be using a lot of videos. We have models that we will utilize for suturing, catheterization. So a lot of simulated training will be happening in the skills lab. And eventually a point will reach where it is that we will get you some pathology exposure and more patient-patient interaction as time go along. It is your first interaction with patients that are simulated patients, but eventually we will get you to start seeing patients with pathology. This is going to be more relevant for you for the year ones who are now going to start. It is divided, it is linked with your blocks. So environmental health, we go through all the different steps. It starts as a gradual process, introducing you to the basic clinical things that you are required to know, and then gradually increase as time go along. So for year one, and then for year two, we get you into the more complex stuff. All of these are going to have videos, and we're going to use the strategy that we spoke about earlier. And then for year three is where we get prepared to get you more and more involved in pathology.
I think a nice thing to point out as well in the curriculum is that basic life support, which is one of the key things if a patient collapses, is actually taught from year one. So, you know, because the university doesn't want to be embarrassed by having a medical student and someone collapses in a mall or something and you have no idea what to do.
Yeah.
So I think that's pretty good in the curriculum as well, because it goes all the way through, isn't it?
Yes,
from year one, year two, and
so
year three.
So essentially basic core skills that we require to know, and that is actually dealt with early and throughout the years. It's going to be reinforced to ensure that you all are competent at dealing with these basic things. With respect to the assessment, at the end of each year, there will be a continuous assessment. That is usually divided into two parts. There's going to be a computer-based picture MCQ and clinical scenarios, right? So you'll get some MCQs on a computer, you'll get some pictures to look at, and you have to answer questions accordingly. And we'll do a mini OSCE. This is where we will actually bring a simulated patient and we'll give you a scenario and ask you to perform a task, and you will be scored upon on that. It all culminates in year three, where we have our phase one OSCE. And this is a very comprehensive, extensive exam that covers all 3 years of training that you've gone through. It's a 16-station OSCE, and it's really a method of determining your competency to proceed. Now that the course is a separate course, it is now mandatory to have a pass to move on to clinical years. So if you don't pass your OSCE, you will not move on to your fourth year clinical rotation. And this is how the assessment is broken down. And as you can see with the linear outcomes, what we do in year one, we assess. What we do in year two, we assess year one and year two. And in year three, we assess all 3 years of training, and your OSCE covers all. A lot of videos are going to be used as a resource. We are actually looking to make help us, and this is important. These links will be provided to you. Now, as you can imagine, we are training you to be clinicians, we're training you to be doctors, we're training you to be on the wards, interacting with patients, real-life patients in time. So as a result, there's a significant amount of rules that apply. Attire is important. We don't want your doctor coming in looking like if he's just been to a club and back. So we have strict rules that we adhere to. Additionally, your commitment and your attendance is very important, so much so that you must have a 75% attendance to your classes. If you do not make the 75% attendance, then you will not be allowed to sit the final OSCE. And with it, there's a lot of rules that apply. And again, this is just training you to be a doctor and approaching the mindset that is required to be professional in your work that you do. Just to highlight that the dress code is so rigid that you, if found to not be compliant with it, you will actually not be allowed to enter into the skills lab. All right. With whatever assessment tool that we're doing, it's all university regulations. So many people try to find different ways of getting around things. Again, all rules apply. And this is the key. All right. So the front of this book, everything in between. Most of your assessment will come from this. This is our major learning resource. And then we're going to create our videos. There are McLeod clinical videos that are attached to this book. You can use that as a learning resource for now until we've created our own videos, and then we'll probably use our own videos as our major resource.
I think also important to say, don't give it away at the end of year three.
Oh, yeah. I should make the point that OSCE is going to be your assessment tool for the rest of your career. So even as when you finish medical school and you start doing your postgrad training, you're going to be assessed using OSCE. Even when you get to the even higher levels, you are going to be, OSCE remains an important part. And this book is literally going to cover all that you need to do all of that. So having said all of this so far, I hope that we have covered a lot of what we do in the Skills Lab. I hope you have a clear understanding. I would also like to now welcome you to Faculty of Medical Sciences, and also to ultimately welcome you to the fraternity of healthcare professionals. With it, there's a lot of social responsibility and a lot of professional responsibility. It is going to be a long, arduous, hard task ahead, but it is quite enjoyable. And actually being able to take care of ill patients and making them better can be quite satisfying. So I wish you all the best. And I'll ask Dr. Rafiq to say a couple of things, and then Dr. Butke.
Thank you, Dr. Hannah. And yeah, I just wanted to add to that, you may feel a big sense of, an overwhelming sense of so much information coming to you. And it's a lot of information to integrate and synthesize. And even for the dental students, you're going to have your own separate dental skills lab as well, starting from the second year and going on to the third year. So the skills lab that runs through the first 3 years, a great foundation and cross-learning and integration process. And just to focus on the fact that a lot of the learning now is online, and we've done some studies now on the 50 years that have completed across the faculty and all the schools to show that the dental students, the medical students, vet, optometry, everyone, how they reacted to this whole sudden change online, which is what you're going to go into. And they've actually reacted quite positively in terms of the learning environment and being online, having simulated learning videos and having interaction with the tutors and lecturers. So hopefully your experience as well will be the same, and probably it will be worthwhile to actually do a survey of them to find out how they react to this online skills lab training. But certainly to keep in mind that even there's a lot of new information coming at you, that it's a matter of integrating all of it, and everything is taught in an integrated way in this faculty, not an old style systems based. And that's the big advantage that you will all have, medical and dental students, going forward. So don't feel overwhelmed, and just take it as it comes, a day at a time, and we're all moving forward in this process. And best.
And I just wanted to add to that by saying we chose the cases because that actually shows a very good way of approaching learning, rather than in isolation trying to learn the Krebs cycle, which you might have done in sort of CAPE. You actually now want to always apply your knowledge and realize that your knowledge application is to save someone's life. So I think enjoy it as you go along.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions for us? There seems to be too much.
The joys of technology.
Okay, Dr. Hanan and team, it seems that we have no questions at present. So I take that as a good sign that our students were well informed. I wish to thank each of you for your time today to give us that lovely inspiration and that wonderful presentation. Students, this concludes your orientation session for today. Tomorrow we have a lineup again from 9 a.m. straight up until 12 o'clock, where we have sessions on PBL, academic advising, an overview of PEC. We have a session on GATE, where I know there you all will have a lot of questions, and we can try to facilitate as much questions and answers as possible. We have an introduction from the MSSC, which is a student organization. And then at 2 p.m., after an intermission, we will be meeting with Dr. Roshan Parasram, who is our Chief Medical Officer. He's going to give us some insight on facing up to the challenge of COVID-19. So I take this moment now to say thank you. Have a safe day. Remember to wear your mask, protect yourselves, and stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, 44.